Hello and welcome to the Empowered Learning Podcast. This is your host, Andy Bennett. On today's episode, we welcome my good friend, Mr. Jeff Peterson. Jeff is a purpose-driven and customer-focused leader, having worked with General Mills, Best Buy, Jostens, and now Echo 360, the worldwide leader for inspired learning. Jeff holds multiple degrees in business communication and is the incredible host of multiple amazing heart-centered podcasts. Welcome, Jeff. Hello, Jeff. How you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to do this. I love this idea, and I love what you're doing.
I appreciate it. This is very fun. You were actually my first podcast that I was ever on. I was on a couple episodes with three now, a couple with business and one a personal one here. So between you and some other friends, it just kind of opened my eyes to the wonderful world of podcasting. And me being a chatty fellow, what a better way to connect with folks and kind of grow your network. So thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me before Christmas, before we get started into the season. And I appreciate your time, man.
You bet. You bet.
Awesome. So you and I have known each other for a couple years now. But for all the listeners, just give us a little bit of a background on who Jeff Peterson is.
Yeah, well, thanks again, and great to meet everybody tuning in. So I've been I'm in Minnesota here, and it's unseasonably warm here this Christmas season here. It's about 50 degrees here today. So I'm looking out at a very brown green landscape instead of the snow usually, but grew up here in Minnesota for these 50 plus years, if you can believe it. And so Betsy and I are here with our kids. We have four grown daughters who are all just one blessing after another. Two are out of college, two are finishing up college, and so we've got them all home here now for the holidays, and it's been great. So I've been here my whole life, and again, very blessed. Had great opportunities to work at some great companies based right here in Minnesota. So I spent most of my career actually at General Mills. Working in various areas of marketing and promotion and sales. And then Best Buy, another great Minnesota company. And then Jostens, another one with selling Hawken class rings and yearbooks.
Right. Yep.
And then now the last couple of years, working in ed tech for a really exciting company called Echo 360. And we do some neat stuff which is when we had a chance to meet. So good things have been happening since I've been at Echo. You yourself at the top of that list, and so we're doing some neat things in kind of the ed tech space, working with higher education and K-12 and government and a little bit of corporate stuff as well. So it's been a great ride. Very blessed and happy to be again here with you and talking about empowered learning.
Awesome. Very good. I appreciate that. So I'd read kind of your bio a little bit, so I knew a little bit of a background here. I have to just mention that the Jostens thing. My sons are in high school, so I got a freshman and a junior, and the Jostens rep came over and gave the little thing, and my son was building his ring, and he was so excited, and I'm like, I know a guy, and he's like, right. Oh, that's kind of cool, Dad. Like there's only so cool that dads can be, but there for a minute moment there, Dad was kind of cool of knowing a guy, right? So
that's right. Well, it's so funny too, because guys like you and I, Andy, when we were growing up, things like class rings, they were just, it wasn't like if you were going to get a class ring, it was like, what are you going to put on your class ring? It was just it was a ritual, really neat. And today, so that's trailed off a little bit, over the years as everything's gotten digital or whatever. But it's neat when you run into people and talk to people, nobody ever regrets having a class ring, and nobody ever regrets keeping those yearbooks, even if you only look at them when it's your X year reunion. It's just those little mementos, I think, they're great little touchstones to those times in our life.
For sure. So now the boys' decision is like, do I get a class jacket or do I get a ring? I'm like, I've got my class jacket sitting in the closet collecting dust. I agree with you. I think a ring is probably going to be a little bit more long lasting. Right. So that's fun. So tell us a little bit about your growing up. Big family, little family. Have you always been in the Minnesota area?
Yeah, always Minnesota kid. So I grew up in a small town, best best town in the world. I always say it's God's country out there. A little town called Annandale, Minnesota. So not the Annandale from the Steely Dan song. Yeah, usually when
Okay.
I sing from Annandale, they start singing "Mild School" from Steely Dan. It's
I
not.
love it.
That's Annandale, Virginia. So
Okay.
Annandale, Minnesota, small little town, kind of in central Minnesota. One of our claims to fame when I graduated back in 1988 from high school was the population of Annandale was 1,234.
Oh, nice. One, two, three,
Think about
four.
that. One, two, three, four. So everybody got their picture taken underneath
Oh,
the
that's
city
funny.
limits sign of Annandale. So, but yeah, grew up there. I have my mom and dad are still there. My dad was a teacher,
Okay.
and so we were very. So all of our friends, all of our family friends were teachers, and so
Mhm.
my two brothers and I have two younger brothers. We all grew up. Really as part of the school. That was our. Everyone. Always said how much they hated school, and I mean nobody likes homework, but we
Right.
loved school. I mean, we loved because that's where all of our friends. That's all. I mean,
Sure.
our school friends, but all of our family friends were also
Hmm.
teachers and teachers'
Okay.
kids, and so really neat experience growing up out there in Annandale. And so my two, yeah, so we all thought we'd go into education, even though our
Right.
dad would always say, just whatever you do, don't be a teacher,
Right.
because he always wanted a kind of a better, what he said, a better life for us. And so,
Sure.
I of course didn't obey that. So when I went off to college,
Hmm.
because part of it, growing up in a small town, and I think we had similar maybe upbringings, but
Hmm.
like growing up in a small town, there were teachers. And the guy who ran the gas station, and like there were just weren't a lot of, like, we weren't exposed to a lot of careers. And
Absolutely. Yep.
so I went to college, small little liberal arts school in Minnesota, to be a teacher. And it was
Okay.
back in kind of the late 80s there, kind of 88, 89. The economy
Hmm.
wasn't great.
Right.
And so they said, if you're a guy and
Hmm.
you want to be an elementary education teacher,
Hmm.
you have a job. Like that is
Huh.
you could, because they needed guy elementary school teachers. And
Right.
so that's what I was going to do.
Okay.
And I went through my student teaching, and I got through the first day of my student teaching, and I
Hmm.
freaked out
Uh-uh.
because I was like, I can't do this. Like
Right.
I'm not, God did not build me for this. And I so
Gotcha.
wanted to be a teacher,
Hmm.
but things weren't clicking. And I
Right.
was, all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have the
Huh.
patience for this.
Right.
These are
Yeah.
like, so anyway, so I scrambled and graduated with a communications degree. My
Okay.
two younger brothers did pursue education. So my
Hmm.
middle brother, Paul, who's just a brilliant, he's in so many ways older than I am. He's a superintendent of a
Oh, very
very
cool.
large school district here in Minnesota, and
Hmm.
just an amazing leader. And then our youngest brother Lee is a gifted musician, and he's a
Oh,
band
cool.
director.
Oh, fun.
He's actually the band director back in our hometown.
Oh,
So
nice.
I always tell him he's living the dream. He's like
Yeah.
back, he's kind of back now leading the music program that he
Hmm.
came up through in
That's
high
cool.
school. So yeah, we're all very, again, very blessed, and
Hmm.
a lot of it has to do with how we grew up in a
Hmm.
small town. I'm a big, as you know, Andy, I'm a big advocate for small towns. I
Hmm.
just think that's where those relationships, and
Right.
for those that haven't had that experience, I can't say enough about, it's not a cliche.
Hmm.
Sometimes I heard a great line about cliches. Cliches are poems that won. Okay.
Huh.
So maybe the way I talk about small towns is a cliche,
Yeah.
because I think that is a poem that won.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. I love that. Well, it's hilarious because we've known each other for now at least a couple years, and we talk often, but didn't know the elementary ed background. Didn't know that your dad was a teacher. So let's just pull on a couple threads there, just because that's super fun. My background. So similar to your youngest brother, I thought that I would go in as a music teacher. Right. I was going to come back. We had an amazing high school program. I was going to be the middle school director to just feed amazing musicians to the high school program, and that was my plan. And then I got into at Adams State College and discovered that the difference between music degree and a music performance degree was like one performance. I'm like, I love playing, but that's a little much. So I shifted gears and got a minor in music and just went the elementary route. So
Yeah,
my entire education career before I shifted over to ed tech was all elementary, and it's a super fun age. Does take a lot of patience, right?
yeah,
But
yeah. I
super
mean,
fun.
I really do think people are there, and I always had an appreciation for teachers, obviously growing up,
Mm,
around it. But boy, having that experience, truly believe our teachers, especially at those younger ages, it's like a
mhm,
calling. It
absolutely.
really is. I think you have
Hmm.
to be, it's a vocation. It's not
Yep.
just a job. I mean,
Right.
when people do that and do it well and do it for the years that they do it,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of material benefit to doing it. So I think
Yeah.
there's got to be something that's coming from within and
Hmm.
above that
Right.
gets you into that line of work.
Right. What did you think your dad's you mentioned that he, whether it was jokingly or in all seriousness, right? Hey, don't do anything but be a teacher. Do you think that was a monetary thing of just wanting, you and your brothers to have, more money to be able to do the things you wanted? What do you think, where do you
Yeah.
think his heart was on that?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was. I think he, and I look back to, I never, um, in a lot of ways, and this is by the grace of God, we all get a chance to grow up and hopefully tell our parents how much we appreciated all the
Mm-hmm.
sacrifices they made for us. But
Yes.
I was a punk kid just like everybody else, and didn't
Hmm.
really appreciate that my dad was the sole provider for our family. So we had a small
Hmm.
family. We had three kids, but my
Yeah.
mom stayed home.
Yeah.
So she's a stay-home mom. So here's my dad, probably, back in whatever the 80s, probably
Hmm.
making 25 grand a year, 26
Right.
grand a year,
Yeah.
as the sole provider for a family of
Sure.
five.
Yeah.
And so I think for him, yeah, I think a lot of it was just like I mean, it was a lot of work.
Sure.
He had second jobs working at a gas
Hmm.
station, for
Yep.
his uncle. And so I think he
Yeah.
just kind of wanted maybe just an easier life,
Right. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
But I think what I see, from my dad, who's a very humble guy, and with my brothers, I think that's where, and it's so easy to say. Here's another cliche. The money. At the end of the day, it's not about the money. And and
Right.
if you're in the right lane,
Hmm.
and if you're answering, kind of that call of what you've been built for, then
Right.
it all works out.
Right.
But yeah, I do think for my dad, it was more of like, gosh, just if he could help his boys not
Hmm.
have to worry so much about, and maybe just eat something more other than hamburger helper. You
Yeah.
know what I
Right.
mean? I think that was probably one of his motivators.
Yep. I love it. And how sad is that inspired teachers that do have that heart are now having to make the
Yeah.
decision. Do I want to go into, I mean, you hear the term the starving artist. I think starving teacher needs to be kind of the new thing, because what they pay teachers is not keeping
100%.
up with inflation, is not.
No.
It's sad because there's this mass exodus of incredibly qualified and driven and passionate teachers that can make more money working at McDonald's or Walmart than they can after they get their degree, and it's such a sad state of affairs.
It is, and actually, I've never heard that Andy, but I love the comparison with teachers and artists, because I
Mm-hmm.
do think both from what they're motivated by, because
Yep.
again, a lot of artists out there aren't making their decisions based on the
Sure.
paycheck. They're
Right.
driven by a vision, or driven
Mm-hmm.
by something. And I do think our best teachers are similarly driven by something that goes beyond that, and should be um, honored as
Mm-hmm.
we honor artists. Because when you think of, especially at those younger ages, I still
Right.
remember Miss Nelson, my fourth grade
Mm-hmm.
teacher. She would let I attribute, and this is a little bit dramatic sounding, but I attribute nearly all of my creative sort
Oh
of
wow.
like inspiration to
Mm-hmm.
Miss Nelson. So Miss K
Uh-huh.
Nelson, fourth grade teacher, and she let a friend of mine, Todd Engel, I still remember
Mm-hmm.
Todd Engel. We'd have story time every day,
Right.
and for whatever reason, Todd and I, um, we loved TV, we loved commercials, and
Mm-hmm.
we would come up with all these like commercials, these little skits. Well,
Okay.
and Miss Nelson would let Todd and I during story time.
Mm-hmm.
So like she'd take a break during
Right.
the story time and break for a commercial. And
Okay.
Todd and I would get up in front of the class and we
I
would
love
act
it.
out some silly kind of commercial, but we did it
That's
every day
awesome.
and it
Yeah.
fueled this like, and she was so good at that. So anyway,
Yeah.
long story, but my point is like, so Miss Nelson, I
Mhm.
like she was an artist. Like
Yeah.
she saw something and
Sure.
nurtured that. And I just think the impact that our teachers
Hmm.
have is very similar. And I'd never thought of that. Thank you for bringing it up. It's similar to how great artists, whether they're songwriters or
Hmm.
painters or poets, they can really make a that really deep impression on
Hmm.
people, you know,
Huh. Yeah,
lasting.
that's awesome. Yeah, that I think everybody has that one teacher or that group of teachers that just kind of changed the course of your life. So that's
Mhm.
really cool. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that seed that she planted was might have been the beginning of your after you found education was not for you,
Mhm.
this idea of marketing and creating commercials and this kind of stuff. I mean, that I know that professionally that's kind of what you do is marketing. So
Yeah.
I guess what was I this is funny for people that don't know it, it's just kind of a throwaway, but for you and I, because we work where we work. So what was the turning point, Jeff, of there you
Nice.
go. No one else
Nicely
will get it.
done.
You and I, that's
I
between you and
gotcha.
me. But what was the turning point for you in your career to kind of go the communications and the marketing route?
Yeah, well, yeah, great question. So when I was freaking out during my first week of student teaching, I called a professor that I had had my freshman year
Hmm.
down at Gustavus, which is where I went. Her name was Dr. Sandy Fredericks, and I had her for just a uh, basic freshman level public speaking
Okay.
class. And I'd done like, in high school, as I said, Andover's a small town. Everybody did everything. So I was in the musical and the one act
Hmm.
play and in the band and also on the basketball team, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
So anyway, I took this public speaking class as a freshman and Dr. Fredericks was like, hey, you seem to enjoy this and,
Hmm.
you'd be good at that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be a teacher. So
Hmm.
that
Right.
was like 3 years earlier. So now I'm freaking out, and what am I going to do? I got to graduate. My dad, my aforementioned father,
Yes. Yes.
wonderful person, but he always said, listen, after 4 years, I don't care where you go, but you're not coming back here. So I knew I couldn't move back home. So I had to have a job. So I
Hmm.
called Dr. Fredericks. I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what to do, but you had told me, a couple years ago that maybe I could maybe do something in communications or something. And
Hmm.
she was like, all right, Jeff. She said, first of all, just relax, just
Take a
calm
deep
down.
breath.
She said, deep breath. Exactly.
Right.
Deep
Yep.
breath.
Yep.
When you get back on campus, just come and talk to me and we'll
Hmm.
figure something out. So we did. And so she
Hmm.
helped me kind of craft a communications, speech communications kind of
Okay.
major. And then in that, yeah, it
Hmm.
was very much like I found my people, I
Hmm.
found a lot of other, chatty, expressive people like myself.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, we couldn't get a word in edgewise with all these people that were just like, and what I loved about and still love about, kind of the communication arts, if you will,
Hmm.
is just the breadth. And better than anybody, Andy, how, it spans from the very technical, like the actual
Hmm.
like production of things, you're
Sure.
back in those days, we were still splicing film
Hmm.
and putting together, reels, all the way to the strategic, all the way to the, when you're talking about brand positioning
Yeah.
and brand promise and those kind
Hmm.
of ethereal things where
Sure.
depending on the company you keep, people can roll their eyes and go, okay, please, like it's
Yeah.
breakfast
Get
cereal,
on with it, right?
whatever. It's like grain in a box, like quit
Yep.
overthinking it. So I love that range
Hmm.
that communications and creative work hits, because as much as I like to kind of do the beard stroking and kind of, sort of big thinking, I love getting into it and
Hmm.
producing
Right.
actual stuff. So it was a good fit for me.
All right. Awesome. So you did, was it Jostens? No, Jostens was right before Echo. So you did General Mills and then Best Buy and Jostens. Is that kind of the
Yep, that's
progression?
basically, yeah. There was a
Okay.
little bit of a stint there. I'd spent most of my career, when you think of a lot of people who come up through the creative discipline,
Hmm.
a lot of people get started in an agency. They'll work in an ad agency or PR or something, make no money, live on somebody's couch, and just
Right.
try to kind of cut your teeth,
Hmm.
which is a great way to do that because you get exposure to a lot of different industries, a lot of
Sure.
different clients. And so I did it. opposite. So I actually started, was super, super blessed and grateful, and lucky to start at General Mills. And
Mhm.
so my first job, I always tell people, my first job was because I thought I was going there to write commercials because I was
Okay.
like, hey, I'm an advertising guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I started in the promotion department, which I thought
Okay.
was the same thing as advertising. It wasn't. And so
Okay.
my first job was deciding what toy goes in when in the cereal boxes. You know how you used to get
Oh
like
yeah.
little,
Okay. Yeah.
that was my job. And I
That's
worked on
hilarious.
Count Chocula and
Okay.
Trix and Cocoa Puffs.
Okay.
Those are
Yeah.
my three brands. And that's all I did is I'd come up with, and I'd go
Awesome.
to like, cocktail parties and they was, hey,
Yeah.
what are you doing? I'd tell them, they were like, that's not a job. I'm like, no, it's totally a job.
Not really.
Like,
I love
that's
it.
really what I do. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I did that, and so I did that for many years, and then when I went to Best Buy, I actually made a little bit of a career shift and got into corporate philanthropy. So
Oh, okay.
I had done a lot of cause marketing stuff at General Mills, and
Hmm.
then really got intrigued with CSR and a lot of corporate
Hmm.
responsibility stuff, and so I
Hmm.
led the foundation at Best Buy, and then
Hmm.
back at General Mills, and
Hmm.
then very didn't mean for this to be such a long story, but then
No,
I
you're
did
good.
my agency thing. So after
Okay.
I'd gotten like whatever 18 years into a corporate career and realized
Hmm.
that I didn't have any agency experience at all.
Mm,
And
okay.
so I actually had an opportunity then to get a couple years of agency experience. And so here I am now,
Hmm.
18 years in, and people are looking at me going, dude, what are you doing here? Like you've already, kind of whatever made it.
Hmm.
And but it was great. Those are probably two of the hardest years
Hmm.
in my career, just in terms of like, though it's just a different rhythm, it's a
Right.
different motion, and it really is much similar, I think, to the work that you do, on your day job, Andy. It's very um entrepreneurial. It's
Hmm.
very like you're right, it's kind of like you eat what you kill kind of a thing.
Yeah,
And so
for
it's
sure.
it's it's very, so it was a great experience for me.
Yeah.
And then I ended up at Jostens,
Hmm.
and then Echo. So yeah.
Nice. That's very cool. So you talk about kind of transitions and those, I don't know, lean years. I guess we can call them the learning years, right? Mine came between right between moving from education into ed tech, and there was a year before I got on with interactive learning that I worked with another Colorado-based company, and it was like if I didn't make a sale, like we weren't eating, and that was you learn a lot. You learn very quickly how to do that, and I had to come to grips with the fact that yes, you're an educator, yes, you have that background, you have that expertise, but you are a consultant, and you have to own this idea of being a salesperson, but not being that pushy guy. Like we're working together on this. That's something that I wrestled with for a long time. But yeah, those lean years, you learn quickly.
Well, and I think going back to what we were saying earlier about educators, I think it doesn't matter what line of work you're in, you're going to hit those lean times. You're going to hit
Hmm.
the times where, whether it's financially or physically or
Hmm.
emotionally, where you're going to feel like there's nothing left in the tank.
Right.
And it's at that time that I think you sort of like, you kind of get, not, you don't resolve, but I think it challenges
Hmm.
kind of your motive,
Right.
kind of your, and so if you're in the right space, if it
Sure.
is education and you're pushing through it, then all right, then you get through it, and then
Right.
you're telling the story 5 years later
Right.
about it,
Yeah.
and people are wondering, well, how'd you get through that? And
Hmm.
you just got through it,
Right.
because that's where you're supposed to be. And if it
Right.
wasn't where you're supposed to be, then you wouldn't did something else, I think.
Hmm. Right. No, I completely agree. I completely agree. So, you and I met when you were working with Echo 360, which is an educational technology software company. Amazing things. We don't have enough time to go into everything that it does, just because they have amazing products. But I guess using or calling back on your experience from all of those other things, kind of tell me what you're most excited about that with your current work with Echo 360, some trends that you're looking forward to. What are some things that get you excited in your world with the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. And I have to say, I never and see, you've spent a lot of time in a career and doing some really cool things in ed tech,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm new to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still, I'm a rookie when it comes to the tech part
Mm-hmm.
of ed. So I've had, a lot of past roles. I've been around education, supporting
Hmm.
educators, but
Sure.
the technology stuff. And I don't even consider myself to be like a techie person, like
Hmm.
I'm not a Luddite, but like I'm not like a first adopter of
Sure.
anything really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thankfully we've got our four daughters who kind of keep me, at least in the zone of
Right.
what's cool. But so
Yeah.
so in a way, it's a little maybe not ironic, but I'm surprised that I'm in ed tech. Okay, I never what I envisioned what I'd be doing. I never
Mm-hmm.
thought I'd be in this, just because again I didn't. I'm not. It wasn't a driver for me.
Hmm.
So, but what I love about it, okay, and what I'm loving about it,
Hmm.
and what I really love what Echo is doing, and it's in thanks to partnerships like we have with you as well, Andy, is it's not. I think some of my not that I ever had an aversion to
Hmm.
ed tech, but maybe some of the intimidation that I had with it was that
Okay.
the tech part, if you think
Hmm.
of ed tech,
Sure.
was that the emphasis was on the wrong syllable.
Yes,
It was
exactly.
like it was on the tech,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's ed
Yep.
tech.
Hmm.
And but now as I've gotten into it, and again with what we're doing at Echo and in partnership with folks like you, when you're working with educators, okay,
Hmm.
who are looking at the tech
Hmm.
as an enhancer. It's
Hmm.
it's like it's like fluoride to the toothpaste.
Right.
It's not the thing.
Sure.
It's just the thing that makes the real thing work.
Right.
So when you've got the emphasis on the ed,
Hmm.
and then the tech is the enabler,
Sure.
um, I love it because
Yeah.
then because it keeps the human
Hmm.
relationship at the center, the
Sure.
inspiration. A lot of time at Echo, and this isn't a commercial for Echo 360, but one of the things we talk about Echo 360 in all of the language of like hybrid learning and flex
Hmm.
learning, and
Right.
it's like we talk about inspired learning,
I love that.
because that word inspiration, it comes from the etymology of breathing, and
Mm.
it's a very relational
Hmm.
kind of construct. And so I love uh, mobilizing technology,
Hmm.
but with the people, the
Yeah.
instructor,
Sure.
and then the learner, at its core. And so it's been a great learning experience for me, and
Hmm.
it's been fun to be able to work with folks like yourself and to
Hmm.
really um, uh, harness the inherent innovation in
Yeah.
technology, which I love. Any creative is driven by that, and so I mean,
Sure.
technology is like it's endemic to technology. So I love
Hmm.
that. But then applying it and with that real human, it's kind of that
Hmm.
whole high tech, high touch kind of a thing.
Hmm.
So I think
Right.
that's what's been a good fit for me.
Right. Um, I do want to come back to the technology aspect, but you've mentioned, just kind of the people you work with. I know that, the CEO, and I think you and him go back a ways. So what kind of people, as you've gone through your career, are you drawn to? You're far enough into your career that you can kind of choose the path that you want to go to. So when you're choosing, who to work with, what attributes and what type of people do you like to work with?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and I've been blessed to be led by a lot of great people, and I
Mhm.
and I love. I think at our core, even if we're leaders,
Mm.
leaders still like to be led. I
Yeah.
mean, we all want to be inspired, and
Hmm.
I used to have actually when I was at the agency years ago, I had a boss. He said it in a little bit different way. He said everybody wants an escalation path, like
Mm.
everybody does.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and his whole point was like, because when the S is hitting the fan, you always want to be able to like
Right.
ladder. But I take it more as like I think all of us I think at some point love being led. So the kind of leaders
Hmm.
that I gravitate towards are um, a combination of and I hate this adage, so I use it and I hate the word hate, actually. I can't believe I said it. I don't like this adage, you've heard, I don't suffer fools lightly. Okay.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't like that because
Hmm.
it feels very snooty to me.
Sure.
But that being said, I
Okay.
do think I respond better
Hmm.
to leaders with a high degree of like intellect,
Hmm.
because that inspires me. Like
Right.
smart people
Sure.
inspire me. and
Yep.
that gets me fired up. So,
Yep.
so like, for example, the guy I work with now, who's a good friend of mine,
Hmm.
he's one of the smartest guys I know,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of that gets me kind of fired up. So
Hmm.
intellect, but then also the combination of kind of the whole, like, kind of the soul, the heart. I
Hmm.
feel my faith is central to my
Hmm.
being, and not that I need to work for somebody who's reading scripture all day, but
Yeah.
I think leaders who have a sense of not just who they are, but whose they are,
Oh, yeah. That's really
I
good.
think is something that I resonate with,
Hmm.
because I think, work is any kind of work,
Hmm.
it's hard enough. Like
Right.
as we've talked about, you're going to go through these trials, and
Hmm.
I think when you can work with somebody who is going to be in there with it,
Hmm.
and not being like, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
we're all going to die anyway someday, and we're all going to go. It's like, that's not it. but
No.
but when you're going through that, to know that, okay, we're working as hard as we can right now,
Hmm.
um but it's not really the end of the world. You know what I mean? Like
Sure. Yeah.
like we're going to do it because this is our pursuit of excellence
Sure.
is actually something that is important in this
Hmm.
life. It's
Hmm.
a demonstration, and a respect for the gifts that we've been given.
Right.
And so there's some virtue in that.
Hmm.
Um, but there is also something, like, we're doing it also for something larger than just
Right.
selling more software. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I resonate with that as well. Just the heart matter, and just being. I think everybody likes to be led. I listened to a coach a while ago that everybody needs a coach. Like, whether you're a top leader or whether you're on the ground, everybody needs someone to strive for, to reach for. So I completely relate to that. You brought up your faith, and I would be remiss if during our time we didn't talk a little bit about a personal project of yours, which is another podcast, the Manna
yeah.
podcast, which you were grateful. I'm very grateful that you asked me to be on that. So I guess tell me a little bit about your faith, and then kind of how that led to starting a podcast about that.
Well, and I have to say, your episode continues to blow up,
Oh,
Andy.
awesome.
Like, neither of us have as many friends as people who have listened to your
Hey,
episodes.
looky there. We're
So,
doing something right.
so that's good. That's good. No, so I grew up, as I mentioned, small town, and a great upbringing, and my so I've always had faith and been around faith, but really, I think, my um personally, I really embraced and started developing an even greater sense of faith and relationship with Jesus um, when I was older. We were actually a couple of daughters in, uh,
Hmm.
so I think I might have been 30,
Okay.
and I went through, as part of the Catholic tradition, went through the rite
Hmm.
of Christian initiation for adults. So it's kind of like getting confirmed
Okay.
into the Catholic kind of faith tradition,
Hmm.
and it just lit a fire for me. So it's
Hmm.
been great. So the last, whatever, 20 plus years, I've just been, just keeping my eyes open, my ears open for
Hmm.
whatever I'm supposed to be doing and pursuing.
Sure.
And so the podcast
Hmm.
came to be a couple of years ago, and it was right before COVID. A lot of people ask, "Oh, is that a COVID project?"
Uh-huh. Right.
Actually, no, actually, it started right before COVID, but then
Okay.
COVID hit,
Hmm.
which was perfect,
Right.
because
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I got all these people that are just sitting around with nothing to
Right.
do at home. And so
Hmm.
the premise of Manna specifically is that men,
Hmm.
by and large, present company excluded, because you were
Nah.
fantastic at this, but men are are not great about talking about their faith.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of that, and this is unfounded, this is me, is I think a lot of it for guys, we're just so silly. Like, we're not confident in talking about anything that we're
Hmm.
not, that we don't master.
Yeah.
Like, but if we're really good at something, then we'll talk all day about it. Or if
Hmm.
it doesn't really matter,
Right.
like if it's sports, we'll talk all day on it. But when
Sure.
you combine things that matter,
Yep.
with things that we don't have a ton of mastery over, I
Hmm.
think guys get like awkwardly reticent about
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So
I got
so
that.
the premise of Mana is that what if guys just heard other guys, just
Hmm.
regular guys,
Hmm.
just talk about faith and talk
Hmm.
about and maybe not even talk about faith explicitly, but talk about being a good dad or being a good
Hmm.
husband, being a good
Right.
friend, being a good brother.
Yep.
And so the premise then is that if more guys can just hear guys like yourself, who again aren't quoting scripture, but they're just talking about their
Hmm.
life as a dad, as a husband, as a
Hmm.
brother, in a way that then we'll all get better at it. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the premise of Mana. And yeah,
Yeah.
we've had probably over 150, 200 guys on now from
That's awesome.
all walks of life, all different, kind of parts of the world, which has been great. And then that has actually spawned a couple. And so my kids tease me. I've got for every podcast that I produce now, I come up with new rubber bands, and so
Okay.
so I know it's just it's so dumb. I don't even think people do the rubber band thing anymore. So so now I've got three of them there. I don't know if you can see them. So we
Okay.
got we got the Mana one, which
Okay.
yours is in the mail, Andy.
Yep.
Everybody who's on the show gets
Oh,
a
very cool. I love it.
and then the other one that I do, I'll get these out of the way really quick. You can't barely see it, but this black one,
Uh-huh.
it says grip.
Okay.
And so grip was an idea a friend of mine came up with, not for a podcast, but he had this
Hmm.
idea that, for men, again,
Hmm.
or I was picking on men,
Hmm.
four things that guys could do better
Okay.
to develop a stronger relationship with Jesus, or four things and to get a firmer grip.
Okay.
Stands for small groups. R stands for reading the Bible. I stands for investing in the kingdom. And P is for prayer. And so he's sharing this with me one day at coffee. And I'm like, dude, that is a brilliant idea. I said, we should do a podcast on that. So grip is totally different than mana. At Grip, it takes our seasons on Grip are very short because there's only 4 episodes per season, and we just
Hmm.
take one letter for each episode and we
Hmm.
talk about that. So that's Grip. And then the last one we just started producing is called Song Walk,
Okay.
and Song Walk is a really if these were on a continuum,
Hmm.
Mana would be at the or like if this is a swimming pool, Mana would be on the like the shallow end. That's like
Okay.
the wading.
Sure.
Grip is kind of in the middle, and then
Okay.
and then the Song Walk Echoes is on the deep end. So
Okay.
so the Song Walk is a podcast where basically I'm the dumb guy asking questions of a guy named Don Frisbee who came up with this. It's really a curriculum that he's developed to help, and it's specifically Catholic, but it's to help people kind of remember and sort of kindle some of
Hmm.
their Catholic sort of like upbringing kind of traditions, and it's all structured around music,
Mm.
art,
Okay.
scripture, and story. So every episode, so Mass, and so every episode we cover a piece of music, a piece of art, a piece of scripture, and a story that all connects back to
Hmm.
an element of the Catholic tradition. So anyway, so those three are the ones that I'm currently blessed to be able to kind of produce right now. So
Love it.
that it keeps us busy in our
I guess it does, in the midst of your day job, right? So I love it. That's very cool. Well, Jeff, we're going to have to do this again because I've got lots more questions that I'd love to ask you, but I'm trying to keep this, around half an hour, which I'm sure we're going to be over, but that's okay because we're having fun. I'd like to, if you're game, do a little grab bag question here. So this is one that we're going to do for everybody that I don't know, you don't know what question we're going to get, but we're going to do our little
Cool.
spinner wheel here. And whatever question you get, I've got 20 queued up over here.
That's awesome. I love that.
All right. Yeah, techie guy, gotta be a little bit like that. So all right, question 10. Let's see what we got here for you. Um, kind of talked about it already. How did you navigate your career path to reach your current position and what lessons have you learned along the way? So I think we kind of heard about the navigation, but maybe focus more on the lessons learned along the way for your career path.
Um, Lessons learned along the way. Uh, I think I think to so here's one.
Okay.
I think uh one of the best lines that I picked up again when I was at the agency
Hmm.
um, was and we'd use it usually when we were working on a tough assignment with a difficult client
Okay.
but the line was, "Hey, we're getting paid to learn."
Okay.
And so and I think I've used that for myself, for our kids, whenever you're kind of going through a rough patch, and
Hmm.
thinking, "Oh
Yeah.
man, is this what I should be doing or not?"
Right.
Is just look at it as a way to, um, you don't have to do it forever, and maybe it's not
Hmm.
the right fit, but
Sure.
in the meantime, look at the opportunities as you're getting paid to learn. And
Hmm.
I think whether you're 23 or 53, I think
Hmm.
I'm still learning every day,
Right.
and I think that's maybe a way to. I think that has been something that I would keep saying to myself and
Hmm.
sharing with others.
Have you ever heard this one, fail forward?
No, I love that.
Kind of along the same ideas, right? Use every opportunity as a learning thing. So when you fail, fail forward, right?
Oh
So that you're
yeah,
you're constantly learning from that. So there we
that's
go. We'll add
awesome.
a little bit to you.
I love that. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, like I said, I sincerely, I'm not even saying this just because that's what you're supposed to say at this point. I wish we could continue, but to kind of keep things somewhat brief here, we got three key questions we're going to ask all of our guests.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Jeff, first question is, who is the leader that you most admire and try to emulate?
Wow. Well, the first answer is always going to be Jesus.
Hmm.
But I think the spirit of your question is we'll get to another one.
Okay.
But that's core. I think I love this, by the way, because it's kind of like asking somebody who loves music what their favorite song is.
Right.
It's almost impossible to answer because there's so many songs.
Sure.
Like I was listening to Rush this morning. Okay, when's the
Nice.
last time you listened to Rush? But
Been a minute.
I was like, you
Yeah.
know what? I gotta hear Geddy Lee.
Yeah.
So there's so many that I would say, but I've been on a Jimmy Carter
Okay.
jag for a while, and
Okay.
not just because his wife just passed away, but I feel like Jimmy Carter, and I'm not I don't go deep in presidential like
Hmm.
history, so I don't know a ton.
Sure.
And I was young when he was, I was like 6 years old when he was
Right.
president and that kind of a thing. But when you look at what Jimmy Carter has done since the presidency,
Okay.
so he arguably had like the best job in the world.
Hmm.
And then a lot of guys or gals after you had that would just like cash it in, just
Sure.
write books, whatever. And when
Yeah.
you look at what he has led
Mm.
since leaving the
Hmm.
best job in the world, let's say, or
Right.
the best job in the world, I think it's been pretty remarkable. The work that he's done with, Habitat for Humanity, the work that he did from a diplomacy standpoint, and of course, see, now I'm proving the point that I don't know my history all that well, but with the Middle East, and the
Okay.
stuff
Yeah.
that he did at the Carter Center.
Right.
In fact, it's just and at the same time, and this is now legend. He kept teaching Sunday school back
Okay.
at his home church down in Plains, Georgia. So I think
Awesome.
as a leader, I think he really, for me, embodies like operating at the height, and
Uh-huh.
then after losing that job, continuing to look for ways to make
Hmm.
these profound differences in our world while at the same time teaching Sunday school to
Right.
little kids in his home church. So I think that's a great
Mhm.
balance.
I love it. Love it. I mean, that just sounds like, and I too am not a historian, but it sounds like he definitely has that servant leader heart of,
Yeah.
you don't get too big for your britches, right? I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
it's very easy for people when you're at literally the most powerful man in the world to be like, all right, I got people for that, right? So
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. So question number two here is, What learning has most impacted you in the last year? Could be a book, could be a podcast, a conversation, a conference. What learning has most impacted you in
Wow,
the last year?
that is great. Um, what learning? This is the part you can edit out to make it to cut out cut out some tape here. It'll make it seem like I got this one right here. Um, I used to say I think the learning of this last year, and again I'm going to turn a little bit of the spotlight, which I know you'll be uncomfortable, back on you, Andy, but you know, um, I've mentioned in the last couple of years, I've been working at Echo,
Mm-hmm.
which of all of the places I've worked is the most kind of entrepreneurial in terms
Okay.
of size and
Sure.
change. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, for me, this last year was one where I was closest to really the ups and downs of
Mm-hmm.
kind of running a business, you know,
Okay.
and and
Right.
and kind of, not just having and I'm not ripping on corporate life, but like,
Yeah.
a bad day in corporate might be, the cafeteria didn't have the lunch that you wanted that
Right.
day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and as an entrepreneur, as your ups and downs are visceral. And so
Sure.
I think for me to go through that this last year, and the lesson is that, and this is such a little orphan anything, but the sun always comes up the next day, you know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
if you're blessed enough to be waking up with the sun, then you got another day in front of you. And so
Right.
I think for me, the biggest lesson of this last year was one of kind of resilience and
Mm-hmm.
just um, sticking through. And attached to that, I think, is appreciation for people like yourself who are really out there leading. And because you got a lot of responsibility, you've got employees that you're responsible for, you've got customers you're responsible for, and feeling that responsibility and pushing through those hard times has been
Right.
something this last year. I've learned some great lessons
Awesome.
in that regard.
Cool. Awesome. Very good. All right. Last one here. Um, so like the name implies of the podcast, what would you do, Mr. Peterson, to empower learning for future generations?
I would both for the empowerers
Mm-hmm.
and the empowees.
Okay.
I would really love to, and as adults, we talk about people like mentors, or you brought up coaches. Everybody needs a
Right.
coach, and we all head nod on things like that. Yep, yeah, you should really have a mentor. But I would
Mm-hmm.
love to somehow wave a magic wand to almost
Mm-hmm.
like guarantee
Okay.
that people in roles of authority, whether they're teachers, elementary school teachers, college professors, even business leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and then the people that they're either teaching or training or leading
Mm-hmm.
would recognize the power in the relationship between the two of them, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be the one teacher to all 30 kids in the class, or the one professor to all 200 students in the lecture hall, but just the power in connecting authentically with one person. Okay, so if you're the student, connecting authentically with one teacher, if you're the teacher, connecting authentically with one student, I think just that relationship, the relational power of that, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's how you truly empower learning,
Mm-hmm.
because the rest of it's all numbers and you know uh, uh, it's all copy. It's like we
Mm-hmm.
can read the books and
Right.
memorize the formulas and
Mm-hmm.
pass the class. But I think when you really think of empowering learning, I
Mm-hmm.
think it comes from the relationships. That's
Mm-hmm.
what powers
Yeah.
the learning, and then the growing from it.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love it. I completely agree. That's always a fun question to end on, just because everybody has such a different lens in which they look at things through. So,
It's a big
I
question, dude.
oh,
Those are big. Those are all three of those
I
are
love
like those are
it.
massive questions.
Good. Got to end with a bang, don't you know?
Yeah.
I love it. So, well, Jeff, thank you so much. Anything else that you'd like to share with listeners before we kind of wrap up?
No, I thank you personally for Andy for having me on. It's an honor to be on, and I love what you're doing, and I feel very honored and blessed to be in your orbit, and just I wish you the best with this. I think it's a great initiative, and getting people to talk about this and share their ideas, and you know and it'll find its audience.
So, well, awesome. Thank you again, Jeff. Have a great Christmas,
Yep.
and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.